Hello and welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else you might need an at. We do a live stream every Wednesday, except when I'm on vacation, like that one time that happened. Basically talking about anything that's fantasy football, specifically Dynasty fantasy football, but really anything fantasy football related from 9:30 till we run out of comments, get tired, or those are mainly the two. If you'd like to talk with us or have a question or comment about those kind of subjects, drop it wherever little comment box, whatever streaming platform we happen to be on, gives you access to, and we'll be happy to do that or facilitate that or whatever. Whatever's the best word, I don't know. We do it democratically, or in other words, we read them out in the order in which they turn up in our little feed, which may actually not be chronological every now and again. So don't get confused if you have to wait a second. Although, since Twitter became a premium only, I will tell people your streaming service, that hasn't been so much of a problem, which is nice. It's kind of more relaxing. But yeah, welcome back. We've got Zach Reed in the backstage with us again, and let's go talk to him about, what was it again? Fantasy football. Hey, Zach, how's it going?
Not too bad. How are you this evening, Pete?
I'm pretty fine. Pretty ordinary. Pretty bog standard day for me there. Zach Reed, right? Zach Reed, yeah. Had a day off. That's nice. Go back to work tomorrow. So, yeah, just chilling. Forgot to pick up my son from jiu-jitsu about an hour ago. So I picked him up half an hour ago and then raced home to talk to you. The hair is a mess. The shirt is on fire. I am on brand. That's what we're going for.
It seems like a mistake that you'd only make once, though, Pete, if your son has learned anything at jiu-jitsu.
No, I make it every week. I'm tempting him. I'm trying to give him reasons to use all this practice. But no, not really. We already have at least 2 comments, so we're doing pretty well. 3 even. JC Troller says he wants a grind. He really
Here we are.
Grind. Well, welcome. You got it. Drew Sorensen Music says evening. I agree. Evening you. And Bob Gilchrist of Dynasty Calculator fame says, how does I get an invite to the show? I don't know. You have to ask Zach. He handles all the behind the stage stuff.
I mean, I could easily do that for you, Bob.
I would like you on the show, but Dynasty Outhouse secretly hates you and there's blackballed you. So, talk to Zach, but I'm not too optimistic. That's stirring the pot. What is going on in fantasy football right now? I feel like anyone making up their minds about stuff right now is doing it too late, to be honest with you. But it does feel like now training camp season is when people are starting to form their opinions about the season, which is just wild to me.
Huh. Yeah, right? and I think that's we're in the pre-drum beat portion of the program where you should be paying attention but not taking it to heart yet. Does that make sense? I mean, we're within a week of the Hall of Fame game, so we're almost to preseason football. Next Thursday is the Hall of Fame game in Canton, and that kicks off the preseason. So you're hearing things. So, for example, 3 or 4 days ago, it was tweeted out repeatedly that the Denver Broncos were in a free fall at the running back position. Javonte Williams is in danger of being cut. It's down to Estime and P. Ryan. And today, Benjamin Albright comes out, or actually, I guess he did yesterday, but he reaffirmed it today, that Javonte Williams is still getting first team reps and everything is still status quo. He's probably going to get 50 to 55% of the carries. And so that backfield for, 3 or 4 days, if you were listening to beat writers and idiots on Twitter like us, or adjacent to us, maybe not like us, you got this panic, and I think that's where we are. This is panic season, Peter, but don't panic.
Season. I'm changing.
Don't panic.
That's better. Can I change that? I can't change.
I don't know.
Damn it. Yeah, Toronto Worms is an interesting one. He's one who got the volume all last year, like every game, who's somewhat disappointing. A few good games, the rest were nothing, but the volume was there. And the only, it's an injury narrative, but the only one that I found particularly interesting is that he was recovering from that severe injury, which normally takes about a year of working on it until you're back to full health. So I kind of like that idea more than anything. The volume was it was a little confusing why he wasn't scoring the points. And so I like the idea he still had the volume, but he just wasn't back to 100%. And this year, he's still going to get the volume. And we're going to find out if that was true, essentially. But yeah, without Russell Wilson, I think it hurts the team a little bit. But that's me.
You're not on the Bo Nix, Zach Wilson, everything is fine train. No.
I think everything is fine about describes it, but probably not for the reasons that they want it to be. But yeah, Everyone Hates Bob sounds like a good TV show. I agree. We should start that one. Alan David, 3 weeks and 2 days until my home group rookie draft. That's awesome, Alan. Good luck. Make sure you draft whatever player I'm high on right now. I forget. I tell you what, some of my wins been knocked out of me for this season because of Addison, and it's not. I don't know how much of an effect it is, and that's why this win got knocked down my sales. Like that second police concerning event is a little worrying for me for one of my favorite sophomore candidates this year. I think that was one of the ones I was high on. Outside of our rookie evaluations and stuff. The rest was like third year breakouts and trying to explain how you can like Drake London, but also think that he's valued too high. Everything we did last week, and it's just a boring conversation.
It's so funny to me. Like, we do rookie evaluations so early, and this is still going back to Alan, that it feels like an entire season ago that we were talking rookies, that we were having our Xavier Worthy,
right?
Odunze.
It feels like that already happened.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild. But all right, weekly London talk. I want a weekly London talk. Let's say we agree we should move off London, and we're trying to acquire a future first. What's the lowest wide receiver you accept with the future for Deontay? I'd love to get Deontay Johnson and a first for London, because I think you get like plus points from London, plus you get potentially a wide receiver. But we're not saying, Drew, that you necessarily need to move off.
Yeah, I think the phrase of the question here misses our point. I'm not saying move off or on. I mean, because if you're talking about a startup draft, I think he's being drafted too high. I prefer the wide receivers around him. That's not particularly hard take when you look at the wide receivers around him. Most people will be like, I prefer London, but I understand it. And we disagree that. But it's fine. But as far as moving off and on, let's use words that actually work. It's trading for or trading out of. And that comes down to what is the trade. And if the trade is in the value of where he's being drafted, I want out of London. And if not, yeah, sure, keep London. That's why it's kind of a boring conversation. It's not a he won't happen thing like a Gabe Davis thing, or this is way overvalued, we need to sell now. It's more of a but if everyone knows that something great could happen there, then is it really a secret? No, is the answer. And that's what I'm saying. It's not really a secret that he's going to pick. It's a good breakout year. Third year's top 12 breakout year, the most common top 12 breakout year, I think. He's a young player who's done pretty well in the league, and no one's surprised. And the rest is just everyone trying to be highest on the guy that has a pretty good shot, realistically. Not talking about his play or anything like that, or the situation or the vacated targets, but realistically, this is a fairly well-timed place for Drake London to hit his peak. No one's surprised, and everyone else is just trying to be louder on I like him or don't. But to your question, Deontay Johnson's fine. And as far as how low, it's about what ADP are we using, or what valuation and what league are we using. I want a wide receiver 2, pretty locked in, And even with a Deontay Johnson discount, because it's been a while, it's been a minute, people have gotten bored of him, whatever. That's the perfect guy to add into that trade because they think they're getting away with something when really you're getting wide receiver 2 production minimum and a first. And that would be perfectly fine with me. But that's one I want to lock in. I want to keep my points. Drake London's going to be a wide receiver 2. Feel pretty confident in that at least. And get a plus. So I'm getting the same thing with a plus. That's kind of where my head's at. So that's going to be different for everyone who is a wide receiver 2 or not. But yeah.
And you might even be able to shoot a little high. Like Drake London in the latest DLF ADP is going 13th. A wide receiver 13. Sorry. Like, so wide receiver 13, which is like, that's up there. So there's more
Probably
meat on it. Like,
yeah.
Like, and this is not a knock at Deontay Johnson because I think he's going to be very good. But I think you could get I think you could get somebody that's got like future value potential too. With the Addison news, you might be able to get into him. You might be able to get into like T. Higgins. You might be able to get into Tank Dell. Like any of those. Yeah. So it's not again, it's not about London bad, somebody else good. It's the way people are valuing London overall is too high for my taste. Now, Drew, you may find in your league that people don't overvalue London, and then like don't trade him just to trade him because he should be a wide receiver too. He's fine, but if
that's
you're
what I meant about the moving off of London. We're not necessarily we're not saying that. We're just saying it's priced in, and that has a different reaction from me. Yeah. And again, as far as what trades I would do, well, I appreciate that might be what it's good trade. And Zach's right. You could probably shoot for higher than Deontay Johnson. I would try to shoot for the highest wide receiver you could get away with, not the lowest one, to be fair. But if I was constructing a dynasty trade, just again, you can do it differently, but I would try and switch positions. If I was trying to sell London, I was looking around my league for who might like London or might like a young breakout potential wide receiver, currently valued at wide receiver 13. I go looking for which tight end or which quarterback I could snag in a super flex with a first. That would be where my head would go. But yeah, decent subject. Devontae's on the final year of his rookie contract. There was no reason to not run the dog crap out of him. I think that's a fair point. Contracts don't really fare a lot into my analysis, but yeah, there's not really a reason to say, well, try someone else right now when running backs normally, even for the NFL, and I think this is what some of the running backs, the hatred of zero RB type thinking, it exists in the NFL as well, apart from a few GMs who are frankly woefully, the polite way of saying this, they are outgunned. They're seriously struggling to keep up with the rest of the league. Who think of running back as a premium asset position. So there are some players that fit that description, but it's about those players, not that position. In general, most players at that position are replaceable, and you will work them like that. In other words, we've got a year left with him. Why don't we just use him to do the running back touches right now? Drafted a few young guys to give him some rest and maybe take over some of that work if we don't keep him around or we can't find a good contract. Yeah, I think that's an underrated point. Or at least one I don't think about a lot because I don't do a lot of contract work. But I think, yeah, it's a fair point. Alan also has the 103, the 107, the 110, the 203, the 2007. I think that's meant to be the 207. And the 302. And I have your notes. Oh, awesome. You're going to be fine then. As long as you're talking about Zach's notes. The ones you got from Scott Fishbowl for donating. I still have that bookmarked, actually. Yeah, under my leagues. Zach Reed, 2024 rookie write-ups.
That's me.
I just flick through. Yeah, there's no question here, but assuming a Superflex, the 103 is what you have. I'm trying to add the 10 and the 7 together. To get a little higher into that top 5 would be awesome. But yeah, outside of that, they're well spaced and you have a lot of draft capital and a very interesting draft class. So you're pretty well set up. Follow what Zach's note said, I guess. The Hex. Hey guys, look forward to your content every week. I appreciate that, bud.
Appreciate you.
For the last few years. Oh, Thanks. Some of the best content in this space. Wow. Thank you very much, the Hex. I don't believe we've spoken before, or at least I don't remember the handle. So yeah, I appreciate you chiming in. Just when we get demonetized from Twitter, or what's the right word? We're not dropped. We're still there, but they don't promote us for free, I guess. Is what it is.
We've been blacklisted, Pete. We've been.
To be fair, our watch numbers were like in the 400 or 500, and the fact is that there were like 50. Yeah. And like there have always been, frankly, it's just that Twitter has been elevating those numbers somehow. Is my suspicion, in the hopes that when they made it a premium thing, they'll be like, haha, you get 500 views if you pay us $8. I don't think we're ever getting that. It's always just the same 30 to 50 people, and we're happy with that. We just like talking to people who are also interested in this stuff.
I think what they were doing too was counting anybody who scrolled by as eyes. So you know how you have the autoplay, all of a sudden you have eyes on them, and we're going to count that. So maybe a little artificially inflated, but
just a touch. That first day when it went over, like it was in the hundreds, I was like, that's not true. My internet would be like in the hell. If that was anywhere near true. 103 and what for the 101? See, that's not the trade I'd go for. I think in the top 3, you have a pretty good tier there. In fact, top 4.
Yeah.
Even especially in a super 5. I'm hoping to grab one of those quarterbacks. I'm pretty happy to grab one of those wide receivers. So, like, I think you've got that pick, if you know what I mean. Whoever, I'm in a tier. Instead, I want to get back into that tier, into the top 5, by trading some of those depth picks and those deeper picks. Like add the 7 and the whatnot, 7 and the 10 to try and get another top 5 pick. That would kind of be where my head's at, or a veteran, or a already good established player. It's kind of where I go with it. Zach, what would be your first thought? And I have all these draft picks. What do I want to do with them in a generic Superflex Dynasty league?
So, and I agree with you that the 107, I mean, the 103 is a pick that I don't necessarily need to move up from there, because you're getting one of, in a Superflex, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison, like one of those 3 you get. And so now I would probably be trying to navigate up and get the 104 or the 105 and see if all of a sudden I can get 2 of those premium players, because I do think there is the tier of 5 where you have the 2 quarterbacks, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, the 2 wide receivers, and still Brock Bowers is in that upper echelon, that top tier for me, because of positional advantage at tight end, and the position as a whole right now is pretty wide open. And in terms of prospects, he is solid. And so it's being able to see if you can move into that 104, 105. I mean, you might be able to pair the 203 and the 107 and move up 2 spots or 3 spots, that sort of thing. And then the other part of this too is if you have the 110 and it comes down to it, I don't mind moving into another draft class with a back end first, because your odds of getting a higher pick in the next draft class are going to be good. And it's not, you're not trading out of your entire draft, because you've already made your pick at 103. You have either made your pick at 107 or moved up. And if you can get into that next class, have 2 kicks at the can with the running back group that is coming next year, you have a chance to really kind of build that dynasty. Now, again, I'm not telling you not to make that pick, but it's something to think about in terms of the hype of this draft class, which is warranted, I think, but it's warranted because of those top 5 players. It's not necessarily like the rest of the draft class is really good, but it's still a pretty typical draft class. You got 3 decent wide receivers with Odunze and Worthy and Thomas. Your running back group is maybe not as good as some other classes. I use the term maybe loosely. It's not as good as a lot of other classes. It's not going to be as good as next year's class. And so if you can, continue to build and kick that 110 down, or maybe you can trade the 203 and the 302 and get into a next year's first, like something like that is how I'd be playing it. But Alan, I don't think you necessarily need to move up to the 101. To Peter's point, you're already in a premium pick at 103.
Sorry, I'm looking something up. Jaden Coker has been getting some hype lately. How do you all feel about him? He's a Panther, right?
Yes.
He didn't turn up for me, is the simple answer. Like, I didn't note him for any particular reason because his production didn't stand out to me for any particular reason. So it's hard to say I have
you may not have
any feeling about him.
Do you even have him in your city? He played at Holy Cross, so it's not like
yeah, he might not even have
yeah,
I don't even think I had data on him. No, it sounds like one of those preseason narratives, but on the Panthers, I guess you're looking for someone to take slot work, which is an easier path to target, especially for a rookie with a little less draft capital. I mean, no, I don't have any particular interest. Not this.
And he was
yeah.
He was really a deep threat. Even in college, he was a deep threat. He was like 17, 18 yards a catch, downfield. I think he scored a bunch of touchdowns. Which doesn't help him in my book.
Doesn't spike
so again, Hex, like, continue to listen, and if he continues to get run and you see him in a preseason game or two, fine, because that's a pretty wide open depth chart. But he is classic, back into the roster fodder / roster clogger to me, because the chances of a player playing at the level that Coker did, getting in and then making an impact, and then making an impact big enough for fantasy is pretty rare. But again, it's not out of the realm. It's just a very minute chance. So, like, keep your ear open, continue to listen, and if the hype continues to build, then act accordingly. But he's not necessarily a player that I am using a roster spot on right now.
Especially wide receivers, you can afford to let the season play out a little bit. And if you see something like in season with lower draft capital, they can become slightly more interesting to the stash. But it's just wide receiver is where roster cloggers come from for the large part. Are you selling Reed for a guaranteed late 25 first? Jaden Reed? Yeah, I'd sell him for a first pretty easy, but it's a balance. I think he could do some interesting things that get people excited in that situation. So you've got to weigh the risk of giving up a potential better trade for what is definitely a value win. I think even in the long term, I think that would be a win. But Reed could do a lot more than I expect. So, like, you've got to balance that for yourself. A first is more than enough for me to cash out from right now. Cameron Meredith, man, yeah. That was painful for me. Cameron Meredith and Tyrell Williams, same period. I have them in every roster. I did not play that right because I just love to stand the low drafted players. That injury was brutal. How much does projection matter? Depends on what context. Let's see. If a team is projected 120 and another team 116, it is essentially a flip given variance. Projection for what?
I'm assuming, like, overall, like your team scoring projections.
Yeah, I don't put exact numbers on that kind of a thing. I do projections, actually, as a matter of fact, or I have the last few years. But it's more of a mental exercise to try and understand how teams are probably most likely to work given the history of the team, the head coach, and the offensive coordinator, and just to see where the landscape is at, create a reasonable expectation of what people are expecting more than what I actually think the future holds. But no, I wouldn't tilt over projection one way or the other. You've just got to honestly look at your team and consider how certain the outcomes are creating that projection, if you were. So if you've got Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Christian McCaffrey, then outside of injuries, you can feel pretty confident in the projection, right? But if you've got a lot of Jaden Reeds and even Tank Dell, or those guys who did great in their rookie year last year, or even a Drake London, should have a pretty good year, but his peak might not be the peak of the other players that he's being drafted around, then you have a little more uncertainty in whatever that projection is. That's kind of the way I think about projections in general. I wouldn't tilt over any amount of difference in general, outside of being projected to not score enough points. That tells you something about what your goal should be right now in general. That's me anyway.
I mean, that's definitely a you question, because I don't project.
No problem, Alan. Thanks for coming back again. Jacobs in the 26th random first for Dell. I think that's too far out. I'd like to see what I think Dell can impress this year. I really do. It's a tough situation in terms of projecting specifically. He's got 3 players who've demonstrated an ability to have 22% plus target share. Diggs is the most likely to co-op the largest volume because he's just done it more and done it at a higher level, but both the other 2 were rookies who should see their biggest increase in volume heading into their second season. Well, Nico wasn't a rookie, but he was a breakout and a fairly unusual one, and that should bode at least decent future potential. Like I've said before, I have to accept he's more who did I say? He's less Robert Woodsy and less Hunter Renfro, than he is someone like I think Michael Pittman was a slightly later breakout. He could easily have a pretty decent range of outcomes. Now, for me in that situation, what I do is I run to certainty for my expectation, and then I allow that Nico Collins could be the wide receiver 1 next year. That's in his range of, it's in everyone's range of outcomes, right? So the certainty for me is that Diggs is a more known guy, so I think of him as the one. Tank Dell was a rookie, and that's a more typical value arc. So I also think he plays a playing style that could complement a true wide receiver 1 like Diggs was playing for the Bills. That's not the likely and most common here. I'm playing a narrative here to be clear, because could Diggs and Nico find a way to work together well to be a 20% share dominating target share tandem themselves? Yeah, but I think for me the more likely outcome, or the most common, would be Dell and Diggs co-opt larger shares maybe, whereas Nico plays a smaller role but more volatile, a higher weekly ceiling than someone like Dell, whereas Diggs is the one that's more consistent to score week over week. Do I know that's going to happen? No. It just seems to me the most reasonable given what we know of them, and then I have to adjust as the season rolls in.
Peter, I wish we'd had this conversation before last Sunday when in the Scott Fish Bowl I took Dell over Collins and I think Diggs. I can't remember if Diggs went before him or not, but
you're much higher on Diggs, which is kind of a reversal from where we were. Right?
Which was that was funny, but like in the back
of
my head,
just Dell and Nico, I'd be all in on it. But Diggs is he's a more known thing in the way I play. I'm like, well, Diggs is Diggs until he proves he's not anymore.
Diggs may have been. No, Diggs wasn't gone. I took Dell in the 6th. I was tilting because Cooper Kupp went the pick before me. That's
I got Cooper Kupp. I was expecting to double hit a pair of, I think it was Amari Cooper and Cooper Kupp. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take those 2 now. Both gone by the time it got back to me. It was pretty upsetting.
Yeah. Diggs actually went 3rd of the 3 in our draft. Yeah.
We see that's the old guy discount. Finally proved. But to your question, Jacobs doesn't factor into it for me much because I'm running backs about points, and in season I'll trade for a running back if I need. This is a first for Dell, and the first is far enough out. I'm like, give me the more promising young player. JC Triller, part 1, I have a very young team, especially a wide receiver. Make more moves now. I mean, if you can. In season, have 3 firsts next year and 126. Well, Feels like you've already made your moves, several in later rounds as decent additions. I can't. Well, there's the team.
Yeah, 12-team Superflex. Start 12. Tiered PPR, 1 running back, 1.5 receiver, 2 tight end. That's interesting. Kyler Watson, Knicks, Achan, Chubb, Brian Robinson, Spears, Jalen Wright, Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Flowers, Dell, Reed, Laporta, and Njoku. That's a pretty solid team right there. All the premium wide receivers are on 2 teams.
What occurs to me is these are all. There's a lot of maybe points here, which is fine. You've definitely got Kyler Watson is a fine quarterback 2, I guess. A-Chain, I think, is a little oversold, but he's a fine 1 in a start 1 running back, especially with that high variance. And Chubb, let's hope he gets healthy. I think he's in a sell window, by the way, because he released a workout video. And the value always comes up. And Brian Robinson also fine as backups to a league where you only have to start 1. But your wide receivers are young, but only really Devontae Smith is solid. Flowers is really interesting at his value heading in year 2, which isn't a great thing to trade away. I'd probably hold that. Tank, we just talked about. Like, I think he's really good, and I think he's in a good situation, but it's a little more uncertain there I'd typically like for that sophomore player who had a great rookie season. So he's more maybe. There's still a little bit more question there than there would be usually. And even then, let me see. It's not start 1 running back. That's just 1.
No, it's one point per reception for running back, 1.5 for receiver.
In that case, it's still a little weaker at running back than I'd like. And your wide receiver point, your value's good, your points are questionable, but I think you'll be okay. Like Zach said, very solid team, especially with those tight ends to back it up. So if I was going to make moves, since you already have first and youth, it would be to acquire points. And so from there, I go to the running back. So we've talked about a little bit this offseason that I think are valued at seconds. And if you're looking for points, I think they're always a good idea, like Aaron Jones. Very into that. I think the top tier is probably not where you want to go. You want to see how the dice roll on your younger wide receivers before you start trading for CMC before the season's rolling and we really know what's happening. Running backs in season, I kind of where I go for that higher tier of running back, unless they're at a significant discount when they shouldn't be, in order to trade for them. So you're more playing the waiting game. Your team's solid. It looks great. We just want that looks great to turn into is great, if you know what I mean. So I don't want to bleed my draft capital because you might find out you have less solid players than we hope you do, based on your roster. And if I'm making moves right now, it's just to shore up my weekly points. Because then with those picks and with those first round picks and these young players like Devontae Smith and Laporta, who are already definitely good, and Kyler, that creates a solid foundation to really compete harder as you move forward, if you know what I mean. When by this time next year, we know Marvin Harrison Jr. is good, Neighbors is good. Suddenly it's not a maybe. You have an elite wide receiver core. You've added a few running back points. And you have these picks to trade away, and you can really pummel 2025. You can try for that now. You can always try any direction you want right now and just go for points with all this value and bleed some of that risk away. Me, I play it more cautiously because I really think with doing relatively little, if Neighbors and Harrison both hit, like this wide receiver core is just a green tick mark, and you haven't had to take extra value away from their youth by making other trades, if you know what I mean. So I would let the season come to you, and hopefully we'll see a lot of what we expect to see. And if not, you can adjust because you have all this extra value. If I was going to make any small moves, it would be just to shore up that back end of the roster with the Aaron Joneses of the world, Deontay Johnson, if you're looking for a wide receiver, which you probably shouldn't be, or looking for quote-unquote values in your opinion, where you think players should be valued versus a market, and just making smaller moves to solidify your points per game without bleeding your first or most of this youth. And that's where my head would be at. Yeah.
With this team, I want to do the Velociraptor test the fences. I want to see how smart my league mates are, because somebody like Zay Flowers, somebody like Jaden Reed, even Tank Dell, but Flowers is the one that really stands out to me. They get overvalued, and if I could go turn one of them into Mark Andrews or a Kincaid or a Kittle or even Bowers. I don't know if you could do this, but like that's the play that I'm going to make because So all of a sudden you're flexing tight ends who get 2 points per reception, which makes the top tier tight ends really valuable. And then honestly, if you're flexing them, it wouldn't matter if Deshaun Watson spit up all over himself again. Although he was 18 points a game last year in a bad season. I know that we don't cheer for him because as a human being, it's not necessarily a pretty picture, but he put up fantasy points. And so then all of a sudden, if you can start multiple tight ends who are getting that extra point per reception on top of, your running backs or extra half point above wide receivers, all of a sudden that makes them a little bit more valuable, a little bit more interesting. And if you can get into one of them from a non-premium position, get that positional advantage, but also get the flex advantage, I think that's a way that I would try to attack this league. But
to that direction, I would say there are a couple of quarterback values I'm interested in the same way, like thinking 2025. Herbert, Dak, if you want to think this year, Dak's a great one. Or Dak will be fine next year as well, but like he's more of a points per game bet. Whereas I think Herbert could have a rough year, but I still want him on my team this time next year. And I think the value is a little low right now. You already have Kyler, but I think Herbert stands out on that list for me as well. And that's kind of a similar move. Instead of going to tight end, you go to a quarterback that's definitely got a high ceiling. A year before we should really be expecting it to return to that high ceiling. I think that's interesting for a team that's got all this value. You can still make a few moves. But I think Zach identified the right crew here. It's Flowers, who I like a little bit more, to be fair, but still Flowers, Tank, who are about even on, Reed. What do I need to add to them to make one of those two moves? To grab one of those tight ends that Zach was talking about or switch Watson into Herbert? That'd be interesting to me as well. But yeah. Yep. Those are just ideas. You got to look at where those players are in your league or or who else stands out to you when you look at your rest of your league. But that's the general direction I'd be trying for. All the premium wide receivers are on two teams. Could target olds. I always think it's a good idea to target olds, to be honest. Yeah. No, I got Diggs late.
Yeah, Bob got Diggs like 3 rounds after Dell, which was
smart.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Dell in Dynasty.
Then Jacobs in a 26 first.
I assume. Okay. Yeah. Jacobs, Najee, Aaron Jones, Geno Smith, a 2027 first and a 25 second. Depends on my situation.
27 first, 25 second. Jacobs, Najee, Aaron Jones. I mean, I'd
probably rather Najee and Aaron Jones on most teams.
Yeah.
But if I'm more building, I could easily see myself just cashing out 2 running backs who are never really going to acquire value except to 18.
You got 3 running backs. Jacobs, Najee.
Jacobs. I see. I wasn't counting Jacobs. Yeah, I should have. But yeah, you got 3 running backs. But I'd probably rather have that side. But I think Najee Harris and Aaron Jones are the players that stick out to me on the top of that trade. And a first is fair, but unless I don't need points at all, then I'd probably rather keep the points for the season, if you know what I mean. And that's where my head goes. If I'm building, pure building, like that 15% of leagues, where you're just building, the players don't matter. You're just trying to acquire value. Yeah, grab the first. It's a little far out, but whatever. Everyone else, I'd probably rather have at least those 2 running backs and the rest occurs.
And I think like that's going to be quite a cache of points for at least this season. I mean,
Smith too. Yeah.
I mean, like Jacobs ought to be the bell cow there. Najee ought to have an improved offensive line and an improved offense in general. And Aaron Jones in Minnesota, like and Geno Smith, like we kind of buried but you got a quarterback there.
Yeah, it's probably the lead there, but we went
Like that's a really nice trade. Like, it stinks to give up a first, and I know in the back of your mind you're going, "Oh, I gave up a first, and I'm never getting a first back for the group that you got." And you're right, but if you succeed this year with that running back room, all of a sudden it doesn't matter that you gave up a first because you won, and winning is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's like better than losing.
Positive.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't tell Xavier Worthy before the rocket ship took off. Did it take off finally? Awesome. Because we have been riding that thing in the garage. Like, did they finally wheel it out and set it off? We didn't even notice wind going past our hair. Like, Xavier Worthy's the first player we both got together on and then came on here and was like, there's a wide receiver here we think we're going to like more than everyone else. That was the one, right?
This has been a weird year, but he's out of practice for the third day with strep throat but
all right. Diggs at wide receiver 25.
No, hamstring.
Right?
Hamstring.
And Cooper Kupp down there in at least the 20s, 24 last time I saw him. Yeah. Wondering how you all feel about predicting wide receiver breakouts based on first down percentages. I've never looked at it, but I have been asked about first downs. It makes some sense that would track valuable usage, like players getting volume that high value care targets. About, if you know what I mean. I'm pretty happy with my breakout process, though, so I'm not really looking for a new one. But yeah, it makes sense to investigate. I asked about Wicks last year and his first down. Oh, I hate them then. If it's projecting Wicks to be elite, then no, pass. But no, it's interesting. I can't speak to it, though, because I haven't looked at it. What I would say, I was just looking this up again, in terms of breakout arcs, like the four most likely for this year, top 12 breakouts. Drake London, Chris Olave, George Pickens, Garrett Wilson. That's the most common breakout year, your third breakout year, after having positive careers to this point, finishing in the top 36, finishing in the top 24. Over 50% of the players who break into the top 12 in year 3 have had a top 24 season, and that's Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, the two that aren't getting talked about. And the reason the other two are getting talked about a lot is because they're already valued more than them, but they are more likely. That's why they're up there. That's Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. However, last year was a particularly low breakout into the top 12 for younger players, and so I'm kind of interested in some of the rookies as well. Unfortunately, Jordan Addison just caught another somewhat suspicious police interaction, but that was the guy I was highlighting from that list. Zay Flowers is probably why I like him a little bit more. Rashee Rice and Jaden Reed. Again, the reason everyone talks about Rashee Rice and Jaden Reed is because the other two are rightly more highly valued. The difference was that Addison was valued below all of them. Now he has more questions. I'm less happy with the value, but still more interested in it. The other thing about 2024 in general, again, this is mostly preliminary breakout research, if you're asking about my breakout process, is that the top 12 breakouts in general, not just young players, was a little low. So players like Terry McLaurin and Marcus Brown, who are entering into their 5th career year, not a most common breakout year, but about, 8% of top 12 breakouts come from that area. And where breakouts in general were 12.5% lower than we expect last year, I think we can have a little bit more hope for those later breakouts as well, like Marquez Brown. You could also include Pittman and Ayuk in that category, but I think they are significantly higher value than Marcus Brown, and so he's the one that stands out to me. That's about where I'm at. As far as using one stat to predict the next stat, one of the difficulties you've got is that the second year is the biggest volume increase in general. So even if it happened for Wicks, you'd have to ask yourself, was it the first down percentage, or just that's what players do? They show promise in year 1, and then they get more volume in year 2. But when you look at those players who increase drastically in volume enough to have a breakout season, they mostly already had significantly above average volume in year 1, which is not Wicks. So you're probably looking at an efficiency sample. That's probably going to be the danger of first down percentiles as you're thinking about looking at them. But I will not discouraging you from actually looking. What I would say is don't just look at Wicks or look for the elite prospects because of this number. Go look at how that would have happened for past breakouts. Did they all show this signal? Did some of them does it seem to indicate a breakout or increase in volume at least, instead of just this player I like did well in this number I want to predict, if you know what I mean?
I have a question, Peter, and this you may not have the answer to this, but in my mind, the third down percentage could get skewed a little bit if you've got a wide receiver who plays when they're in 3 wide sets, which would be third and long, and so you're tending to pass, and if you complete a pass, it tends to be a first down. Like, and again, I don't know, but just like
you're probably going to have to consider ADOT, and also, you're right, first, second, and third down, which is where you're looking at splits on splits, which is another reason I kind of don't like those kind of things. But you're also going to find a few players that show up high because there's a usage trend in the NFL where players are used for a specific purpose, so they look elite based on specific purpose metrics. It's like Christian Watson looking like he has a higher role in the offense than he does because he's brought on the field to do one specific thing. And then when they're not doing that thing, he's not on the field. And so by route, he looks pretty good. But if you look at the overall routes for the team, you can see that he's not being utilized as much as someone that you would expect to have a breakout. Right. Although this year is a little undervalued, actually, because of that injury. You also got to take those things into account. But you just got to work through it piece by piece. The first thing I would start to do is go look at the history. What happens typically? Then what happens to those players that do break out? What do the rest of their stats profile, which is what Zach's talking about, look like? And does it look anything like anyone from this year rather than specifically Wicks? Peter hates Wicks. I do. On a personal level. I just don't like them. No. Hex, I've been planting my flag in Wicks since the last month, and I would say the value's fine. There's no, it's fun to root for a player to do something that no one else, I get it. That's why we all invented the term sleepers and values, and we all chase them. So, don't get me wrong, Wicks isn't, it's not like a London problem where it's built into the value. It's fine to have Wicks on the back of your roster. Let's hope he does something. But, yeah, I'm rooting for you. I rostered Adam Thielen in my day. Malik Neighbors will feed families.
I think so too, Genshi. I think he's pretty darn good.
I think he's going to snatch food out the mouths of babies from other football players that would like to have those targets. That's what I'm thinking. Just all going to Neighbors. He's going to get all the money and all the targets. But I tried. Give me a break. Standing pat for the most part. The B.
Then I think probably.
Yeah. That's a home run for just a first. Yeah, I think there's a lot in that trade, but that's right. And I was trying to point out too, you're never getting a first back for any combination of that package, which is fine. But you just have to,
But you have again, it's back to the 3 phases of value. You have to understand that what you're getting is points value that equate to more than the first future value, even though you're never gonna get that future value out of what you got. You're going to
unless you're building, because then in a year that first trades more easily to someone to get something else. Yeah, it's about the ease of trade when you need value, But it's absolutely right. So we're still moving worthy for ETN. Yes. I would still take ETN. It's just a boat, maybe a boat. It's positional scarcity. What up, Hollywood Titan? Not much, man. Not of you, Cam. That's for sure. I actually don't.
Well, no, we're not. We're not getting the 17,000 viewers on the Twitter machine.
Which were never real. We have a better quality. We traded quantity for quality.
Always. I'll take the quality of this chat over whoever's scrolling by on Twitter.
So, Dell, say it plainly, man. Am I underrating his potential this year? If you're drafting him like that, you expect a lot, right?
So, yes, and also fishbowl scoring with the first downs and that sort of thing. But I think that Tank Dell, I think they end up running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in Houston. I think Tank Dell is probably the obvious choice to slide inside into the slot.
That's,
And I think
that's what
that he ends up just eating in easier matchups because he's still talented. He's still that same talent level that you saw last year where he was beating guys even from the outside. And so if you have that now where he is getting easier targets, better targets, maybe the volume goes down a little bit, but I think the efficiency goes up. And maybe the volume doesn't go down. Maybe Houston just throws more. Like that could be too. Like second year, they kind of have their rhythm, and so it's not a. If you told me a year from now that Diggs lit it up in Houston and was the wide receiver one there, I would buy that. If you said Nico Collins was, I would buy that. If you
that's
said
kind of where I'm at.
yeah,
Like I could see every scenario,
Yeah.
and so I'm just going to my, old guys first, and then young promising sophomores. I like their rookie profile second.
But the one thing with the old guy is he's moving teams, and sometimes that's hard, and especially when you have two really good young already established with this quarterback wide receivers. And it's not to say that Diggs is not going to come in and see targets, because he will, but like I think it makes it a little more even. If I were going to guess, I would guess that Nico has a little bit of a squeeze.
If I had to bet on one to be squeezed, yeah.
Yeah. So that
in the
that
back
was
of my mind, I can't get out the idea that actually, like, getting Diggs itself was a weird decision. I mean, if you can get Diggs, you get Diggs. It's just an interesting team move, and I can't help. Like, what if there's a struggle year 2 for Stroud? I mean, the whole NFL now has a year of tape on him, and I seem to remember that being difficult for good quarterbacks.
Yep.
And they maybe don't feel happy with their wide receiver balance. That's why they were willing to go and get and pay for Diggs. And that's a -2. So maybe the whole thing is a little touch disappointing all around, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not predicting that. That's one of the niggles I got in the back of my mind. Absolutely. See, he agrees with me. He didn't know I said that. Zach hates him, but I'm glad I got Kenneth Walker share in Dynasty.
I don't hate him. I just think that he was overpriced for a long time. Like, he's a back end running back too. Yeah, like I'm glad you got him too.
I keep thinking, speaking of overpriced for a long time, like every time someone brings up Brandon Ayuk, I think Mike Evans. I hated Mike Evans for so long because everyone wanted to value him there before he got there. And then it went down and I bought in, and then it went back up and I sold. And then his top 12 year came a little late. And everyone forgets that because the constant 1,000-year seasons, but most of them were disappointing based on where you were drafting or valuing him before the season, except when I came in. I'm just saying, actually, I think I mistimed it in the end. But like, I got so many good value years out of Mike Evans just by accepting that he was good and could easily break out into the top 12 in a year, but he's already being priced there. That's what I feel like about Ayuk. I just go up and down and up and down. I'm always on the out by the time the season gets there, and it works out more often than not. And eventually he's just that veteran who's been really solid, and people underrate how many 1,000-yard seasons he's got. And you're like, yeah, but you paid a lot for all the seasons. I don't know what to tell you. Yep. But yeah. It feels like Kenneth Walker. Tank Dell is elite.
He separates
I
like it.
Yeah. Only someone liked him as a rookie. I don't know. Richard Davis, 10 teams to flex, 10 in premium, start 12. Trade away either Saquon, Connor, Henry, Najee. Connor. I choose to trade away Connor. No, okay. That gaggle of running backs, a 26 first for Hall. That's too much for Hall with Saquon on the other side and Najee and the first. I would take the other side. But you're saying Saquon plus one of them. Is the first included as one of the options, or is that in addition to Saquon and the player?
That's a
So
good
you're
question.
trading the first no matter what. Yeah, I want the Saquon side here. I think you're overpaying for youth, which is not what I want at running backs. I want points.
Yeah, but
And
I think Hall
Saquon plus some of that could equal Hall's ceiling. Yeah.
I think Hall gives you points too, but I don't.
Yeah.
That's
All that?
a lot
Plus
to
a
give up.
first?
Well, and so Richard, you're gonna have to like come back and run it by us like we're 5.5 because like I don't think that I think that we're missing something with this. Is it Saquon or Connor, Henry, Najee, and then the 26 first? Is it Saquon plus one of those guys and the first? I guess that's the
Yeah.
question because
Yeah.
Connor, Henry, Najee, they're all scoring points this year. I honestly, I think I'd rather give up Saquon than all three of those players if I'm getting Hall back.
I
Because
see what you mean.
I'd rather have Hall than Saquon, and I
Yeah.
think I would rather have Connor, Henry, Najee than Saquon in terms of short term and points. I mean, obviously you want Saquon long term, but if you get Hall back, I'd rather have Hall than Saquon. So like,
I agree with you on the first. I think I disagree on the second. I like Saquon having those points in one thing would matter to me. But I mean, we're
yeah, but
close.
wouldn't Hall? I mean, would Hall
Yeah, I
give you
think.
those points in one thing?
Yeah.
So you'd rather have
Was
Hall and
first.
You'd rather have Hall and Saquon than
Yeah, I
Hall.
think I need this trade line itemed.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
rather have Saquon on a first than Hall, but I'd rather have Hall than
Uh,
Saquon
See, I'd
on
rather have
one.
Hall, I think, than Saquon in
Okay.
the first. Even, I mean, it's 2 years out. Like I, Brees Hall was fantastic last year, and they ramped him
Sure.
up. And he is one of the two. I mean, I guess CMC 2, 3 dynasty running backs that like you're pretty sure they're not going to lose value, and you're pretty sure you want to roster them for this year or next year. It's like Bijan, Brees, maybe CMC.
Stroud, 650 passing attempts.
I hope so. Sign me up for it.
How good are they? Nolan, howdy, Nolan. Genji, Mike Evans, half PPR was wide receiver 12 his rookie year. No one plays in half PPR except when they're trying to make a point about Mike Evans. So come on.
This is now we're back to Kyle and I got in a fight. We almost the podcast almost never happened because he was trying to do half PPR and I was trying to do full PPR in the evaluations and analysis. So I agree with you. He was a big Mike Evans guy, so that's probably where it started.
Those are three nasty running backs, value-wise for sure.
Points wise,
Saquon on the first for Brees. I'd probably just keep Saquon. I don't think the points are that different. But nah, Hall's better, younger, even more easy to trade next year. I get it.
and I think the points are more different than maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not, but like
I still have Saquon Buzz his rookie year in the back of my head. He's still one of those guys to me, so I might be. Well,
yeah,
Hall
but
definitely is.
but Hall is too. Yeah. But
Brees and Bajon are CMC light. Everyone's CMC light. Pretty much everyone's lighter than CMC. That's what that means. Yeah, there's no such real thing. Brees and Bajon are well. We haven't seen it from Bajon just yet, but I think we're gonna. But they're as good as we get until we find a player like CMC, which there have been relatively few of. So, like, I don't like putting it in that context, but I see what you mean. Do you think people will be quicker to be out of A-Rich? I think if it struggles, they'll be out real quick. That's part of my anti-A-Rich thing. Like, I think that trutherism is a lot weaker than the tea with which they spray you with. I think the minute it struggles, they'll be like, these fucking idiots all betting on the same thing as Trey Lance. Like, they'll immediately abandon you because that's the crew that you're rolling with. The I can't be wrong, so I'll change the thing that I said crew. Apart from Zach's got a very good point about his running.
Well, but isn't it it's whether or not Indy gives up on him? Because if Indianapolis rolls him out there, he's going to score fantasy points. I can't tell you that he's going to be a good quarterback, but he's going to score fantasy points because if he can run. I mean, even Cam Newton in his Patriots era was serviceable, and he was awful, but he scored touchdowns and he ran. You know, if you're putting up 40, 50 yards a game with your legs, you're going to be
a very good point with it.
Yeah. And this is not pro Richardson or anti Richardson. It's just
it's Justin Fields, the other example he's got here. He had a fantastic breakout year. His legs. That was what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
Andrew Carlson, in a 12-team, 1 QB, start 8 PPR, would you trade Breece Hall for a 225 first, a 26 first, and a 25 second, and a 26 second? I mean, let's just take the seconds out of it. That piecemealing it's basically 3 firsts.
So here's
2 years.
Here's the thing, Andrew, that changes everything for me is that it's a 1 quarterback league. And so that greatly diminishes the value of second half of first round picks.
I was also thinking the start 8, like you need studs.
And start 8, you need the top. So like
it's harder to catch those, so those first become a little less valuable. That's true. Yeah.
Like that, like it's on paper or in a trade calculator. Like if you went over to DTC, if you plug that in the Dynasty trade calculator, it would tell you take the picks.
Yeah.
And that in theory is probably right, but your chances of hitting on those picks for players that do what Breece Hall can do for your team, I think is maybe not quite as high as you might think.
Some of that is the value of Breece Hall being one of those 3 young, great running backs. So. And the way it changes for me, or would change for me, is if you don't think you're a top 3, top 5 team, I think you can grab running backs with a first, even in this league when you need them. And so I'd rather take the picks because you can do more with them, more teams trade them more assuredly. But like if my team's anywhere decent, you want Breece Hall in this format. Start 8. Zach's right to point out that it's only 1 QB as well. Like you want studs in this format and you want to overemphasize it. And that's Breece Hall. And it's hard to catch those guys. Now, again, like if my team, I'm not winning this year, like just being reasonable, not like a hot take, not guessing, but my team's, then I might lean the picks. But it's not because that's what Breece Hall's worth. It's because that's the direction I need to run.
So Andrew, with this, and Peter, I'm gonna take your, because I think you're right. If you're not,
I got you.
If you're not contending, if you're not competitive, then this is a good move you forward trade. But what I tend to do with running backs, and at this point in their career, so Breece Hall's going into his 3rd year. This would be the point where I would start to look to trade that running back for a young, proven wide receiver plus picks. And that's how I move forward. So instead of getting 3 firsts, take 125 first, take 126 first, and try to get a young, proven wide receiver. See if you can get Waddle, see if you can get AJ Brown, see if you can get one of those players and move yourself forward while still maintaining a little bit of that that solidity that you have from having a wide receiver that is going to be both valuable and point scoring.
That's the trade if you go in that way. I think that'd be a solid option too. If you just don't like it, that's why you're asking. Like, I don't really want to go sans players. Yeah, that'd be a really good option. Yeah. That's why Zach's the big brain on the show. NG, Mike Evans was wide receiver 13.
He wasn't even a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, wasn't a wide receiver there. No. Yeah. No, I had this argument and I stood by that damn line. There's a reason we have the dividing line. What happened the 2nd year? Quality over quantity. That's right. This is a punk rock of fantasy football, and that's why it's one of the best. Some days everyone will realize it. I appreciate you. 12-team Superflex start 10. What kind of deal would it take for you guys to take away Caleb Williams? Over other QBs are Herbert and Young. Trade away Caleb Williams, not take away. I mean, I'm not standing too hard on Caleb Williams yet. Like, I'm at market that he's a great QB prospect. He's QB 1/2 in this year's class, you know? So it's not like I have any great, no, he's going to be Mahomes. I think it's in his range of outcomes that he becomes one of those elite guys. But also he could be Trevor Lawrence. You know, that would be more than reasonable. I don't expect him to bust. So in that way, I guess I'm high. What I'm saying to you is, like, you don't have to wow me with the trade. Like, I need 19 firsts and Justin Herbert. I just need pretty solid value. Those top 4 picks this year would easily trade for like a top 24 dynasty value. Isn't that where they're going in and around? You're getting close to 3 firsts generic value in a standard league, in a generic league. So it's about the trade and the team. Typically, it's hard to trade away a quarterback without getting a quarterback in return. You already have Herbert, but I like Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott at their values. So put a first with either of those. I might be tempted.
Honestly, even Brock Purdy. Like, I would do that for Purdy as well. Like, those 3 quarterbacks are, and it would be to me Kyler, Dak, Purdy. In that order, but if I could get one of those back plus a first, or one of those guys back plus a solid wide receiver, or a potential difference making tight end, if I could get Andrews or Kittle or something like that back, that's what I would be doing.
An alternative would be to Jaden Daniels. Like, I don't have them that much different, mainly because of Zach. Like, Williams is a clear one for me, but Daniels wasn't bad. And speaking with Zach, watching the film, literally, and I was like, okay, so about the same value. So, like, what would they give anything on top of Jaden Daniels? And I'll switch you. Like, if you're just looking for another QB.
Yeah.
And where you have Young as your second QB, like, I still feel like I need a QB in this trade, just to be clear. Like, you can cash out of a QB when you have that option. I don't think you have that option if those are all 3 quarterbacks. The first is included with any of the players.
So Saquon, a first plus a player, I think that's too rich. I think that now we're getting into, like, Brees is great, but you're giving up too much.
So Saquon the first plus any of the 3. Yeah. Team is loaded, by the way. Well, that's nice. With 4 to 6 4 of the top 6 wide receivers, and CMC, and Gibbs, and Saquon. Doing pretty good. Henry, Connor, Daite, plus Hurts, Allen. Then, I mean, you can do either trade. Your team's still going to be pretty good if one side just sparkles for you, as it were.
Yeah, I mean,
adding Brees Hall to that mix would be pretty nice. I see what you're doing. Yeah,
it would, but I guess it depends on how many guys you're starting and what you're doing. But also, like, see if you can get back something. See if you can get back a second. Like, try to balance the flavor. But if you were trading those, and I know he didn't ask us this specifically, but if you were trading those players, which one of those 3 would you put in?
That's what I was going to say.
Whether you're trading Connor, Henry, or Najee.
I'd rather trade Connor. Actually, the player that stands out on this list is Gibbs. His value is not far away from Brees Hall, and I'd rather have Brees Hall than Gibbs. So I could put a much smaller plus with Gibbs and get Hall. I'd be happier, I think. Now, that's where my mind went to. If you just want Hall.
I don't mind that either.
Yeah. Like, I'd put Connor with Gibbs and take Hall. I think you're a little higher on Connor, rightly so. I get it. But
no, I mean, Connor's a 1 year, like, he's a 1 year rental, and you're hoping
I
he
trade
stays
that
healthy.
1 year for.
Yep.
Yeah. Is Jameson Williams worth holding? Yes. But if you get the chance to trade him away before the season starts, I would do it. I wouldn't cut him, although he's in that cuttable category for me. But there is some potential, and there was some draft capital. And in a lot of leagues, there's someone who still has a little bit more hope than I do. So any positivity this season, and there's also a chance you could trade for it right now. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily cut him. I'd chop him around in different trades, not as the trade, but like put him with other things, trying to get the value out of him that way. And if not, see how the season goes. Like, he's not dead. He's a person who was pretty good in college, So, I don't know the future. So cuttable, but I don't think you have to cut him. Like, the roster spot isn't actually more valuable than Jameson Williams before the season plays out, and you find some waiver wire targets you like. So, yeah, I would hold him, but I'm looking to make moves with him now, and if there's anything that changes in season in the positive direction. Yeah.
I took so much flack for not really liking Jameson Williams in that class.
Yeah, he was a big nerd guy, or a certain branch of nerds really liked him. I was like,
he's very fast.
Yeah, he's a good deep threat, if I remember right, down the field kind of thing. Which is not nothing, but it's not that tier 1 type thing.
Yeah.
People forget we've never been wrong, We've never gotten a rookie evaluation wrong.
Rondell Moore says what?
Nicky Harry, Corey Davis, Traylon Burks. I will say my hit rate on not liking a player is actually I think is actually pretty impressive.
That's a valuable.
I think that's a thing. I think it's not as valuable. I'd rather guess who all the hits are. Don't get me wrong. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. But it's confidence building when I don't like a profile and everyone's telling me that it's good. That was Marshall. That's what get it to me, because literally everyone I respect liked Terrence Marshall from the nerd point of view. If you know what I mean?
So you don't respect me.
Everyone that's been doing nerd work that I learned nerd work from, and they all like Terrence Marshall. And I was like, man, I hate this profile. And I decided to trust my gut on that. Like, if Zach, again, if someone's doing a different process than me, like Zach, like Jake used to, I'm more hesitant on my opinion might be wrong here. And it's not because I'm so good at analytics, but it's because eventually you have to take your own opinion, And sometimes you're going to be wrong. And that's okay. I don't know the future. Be reasonable, be humble. But what's the point? If you don't, even when it's JJ Zacharyson saying, I don't understand why you don't like Terrence Marshall. If you've done your due diligence, at some point you just have to be willing to go in. And yeah, that's kind of where I came out on, where I learned that. And also try to figure out when Zach or Jake or Ray GQ or someone that does a different process, that's a different thing. I shouldn't be disagreeing with a different because I don't have an insight on it. But just have to go, that's interesting.
You can disagree from a different point of view, though, Peter. I think that's the thing. That's when you hear me say, if you and I disagree, I'll go back and I will watch again. But if we continue to disagree after I go back and watch, I'm going to break ties toward my evaluation because I'm going to get beat on my fastball.
That's what we should all do. And if you're going to get it wrong, at least you try.
Then then I'll own it.
Tried to listen. You tried to figure it out. I think Debo was one of those for me where I went back and found a little bit more positivity, but I still didn't like him as much as you did coming out.
Yeah.
And I think Deontay was another one. I thought mediocre is fine, and you liked him a lot, and so I tried to get a little bit more positive, but it didn't move him into my top 12 or nothing. But
it's so funny though with Deontay Johnson, he was a lot like
Waddle was usually.
What?
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I just remember
you're good.
You like Jalen Waddle, and that's one of the reasons I went back to reevaluate because I only really have 1 year to work with on him.
And that's one of the things that's really tough about using the numbers, but also tough with tape is that Rondell Moore was that way. How do you how do you figure out what?
How do you figure that out?
Yeah.
I mean, The truth seems to be we don't. But that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with not knowing stuff. I want to know what I can't know as much as I need to know what I can, if you know what I mean. I guess that's where I'm coming out on it. Genji says he's stinky. Yeah, that's about sums it up. Thoughts on Sam Howell and San Francisco? Like, Purdy is their quarterback, right? I'm not misremembering what happened last year. He did pretty good over there.
No. In a Howell in a Superflex league. Howell is in
Superflex.
Seattle. Yeah, Howell's in Seattle behind Geno Smith, which like that could happen.
I would roster him as a, you're rostering quarterbacks hoping to catch, because, 2 or 3 come up every year. Just we didn't expect that guy to be the starter. Why not?
But I don't think he's a good quarterback, but I think he's a good fantasy quarterback. Like he takes way too many sacks, but he throws the ball a lot.
There's like 5 rushing touchdowns through his first few games or something. Really helped him out.
I'm still stuck on the Deontay Johnson evaluation because it was no. It was strange to me the way he changed in the NFL, and it was very similar to Golden Tate to me. Like I loved Golden Tate back in 2010. I wanted the Patriots to draft him, but he was really a downfield receiver, could create separation, was quick enough and fast enough to do that. Deontay Johnson was the same way in college, was a downfield guy. And then all of a sudden they swapped him, moved him inside the same way that Golden Tate got moved inside when he ended up in Detroit. And it was beautiful. So it was like, yes, I was right on Deontay Johnson, but also I was very wrong on Deontay Johnson because he didn't do it the way that I thought he would.
Take it, I guess.
Yeah.
Andrew says J-Mo is worth a second easy right now. You don't have to trade him for a second. To be clear, I mean, you can. I would take the second value. Like, I want out at that value right now. But you don't have to trade for a second just to go to the Dynasty players, just like picks thing. Like, I strongly don't. I do like the fact that you can easily throw picks in trades and get them done. That's what I like about them. But yeah, if you could trade them for something that's worth a second, Aaron Jones, but you're building, it sounds like more, so maybe not. But yeah, I want out at that value. I don't think he comes back up to that value ultimately. But he might see a peak in season, but it's like where some people are trading late first. But I would take the second right now rather than that risk personally. But you don't have to. And again, you might not find that trade, even though you say it's easy. Just trying to provide a context barrier around there. Genji, nah. I will be surprised if I could get a second for him. But it is after the draft, and the only seconds left are like a year away, and everyone forgets I want them in a year. Or value them in half a year. You guys remember Rashad Bateman? I still remember that miss. I think I got too much of that right. Like, I thought he was going to have a positive rookie season, which he did. Everyone went nuts on him, and I was like, that's too high, and I came down. Like, the whole value arc, like, I don't think I ever really lost on Bateman. He was a good rookie pick. The value came up significantly. I was happy with his rookie year. And if I could trade him at the value he escalated to, I would have been comfortable with that. And then it disappointed. And by the time he came down into a third, I was like, I will buy in again now. And I don't feel like I'm lost much in that trade, And when he didn't hit after that post-hype. But yeah, I get what you mean. I thought as a rookie, he was going to be a lot more consistent for fantasy. So my evaluation didn't pan out. But again, that's why I don't have an evaluation. This is what I know a player is going to, this is how good he is. Like, there's a range. And so I try to move with what other people think. Be high and low at the right times.
Bateman helped me revise my process
I remember that.
Wide receivers, like Bateman and Bell. And like, it's that.
If you can't describe why they're how they get in the right place.
So Genji, you say, do you remember Rashad Bateman? My Rashad Bateman write-up was at first glance, the Mona Lisa is a smirking woman in a drab dress seated in front of a winding smudge of a road. If you're not looking carefully, you probably missed the subtle genius of Da Vinci. Rashad Bateman film has a very similar quality. You can watch a 16-catch, 177-yard performance and maybe his first 3 years in the NFL and come away underwhelmed.
Yeah. I remember that one. I would easily take the 104, the 105 in this deal.
Yes, that's a
no
great,
question.
Alan.
That's
That
how
is
I would prefer
exactly.
trading a player. It's not, oh, he's
Yeah.
worth a second. It's like, all right, let's put that value somewhere. Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Excellent.
you made Jameson Williams become Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers, and you dance. I don't dance, but you dance.
Like everybody's watching, but you enjoy flexing, you know? And Jame was scoring 2 TDs the day everyone in the country is watching was
Island games, baby. It's one of the.
Oh, don't even mention the David Bell. David Bell. Oh yeah. But again, that's another thing. I was high. He was just like a mid-second round pick. You know,
Yeah.
that's what you had to be at to be high on him. It's not like I bled first or chase him to the moon.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to say I've got no losses. I got these players wrong, but that's why I try and take shots at this level of player more often these days. Or trade up into the top tier and say, "Oh, I like Neighbors, I like Harrison." You know, like there were lessons there I've tried to apply and be more accurate, or at least lose less value without a decent shot at the upside, at least. Because neither Bateman or Bell, and that's why I didn't like the Bateman value rise, really sparkled for the top range of outcomes, that difference making outcome. I just thought he could be a solid top 24 player. You know. Wide receiver, yeah. But maybe I'm wrong. I say it as clearly as I can. Sometimes I bumble around with my words, but I'm trying to be clear. Maybe I wasn't as clear enough. You guys are the best. So great you answer every question. Well, to be fair, there's not many of us, which is, again, I can't reiterate that we kind of like that. Like, we like being able to talk to anyone who's also willing to waste a Wednesday night when you have so many important things to do just in your life.
And
talking it's stuff because it's fun.
And it's fun. I mean, we talk about this too when we do the Rate My League shows, but we can get a little bit granular with this too.
More fun than talking.
Yeah,
I think this has replaced and partly why my content's dropped off. I prefer this and saying in your league maybe. Yeah. Instead, it's you saying JMO and this and this is my league format. I'm like that reminds me of my other league. That's fun. Yeah, that's better.
It's a better avenue to give analysis if you're giving specific analysis rather than like you can lean way back and give the 30,000 foot view and say that these players are buys and these players are sells, but if you don't know the context of somebody's league and you don't know the context of somebody's league mates and all of that, which again is why I advocate so much for understanding who you're playing with and understanding how they approach the game, because like everybody's got the same information in terms of players and evaluation if you want it. Everybody can subscribe to PFF. Everybody can listen to Peter Howard on Wednesday night, do the grind. Everybody can listen to JJ Zacharysen's podcast. Everybody's got that same information. We can all go to Pro Football Reference, but the advantage is understanding what's going on in your league and what's going on in your league mates' heads. You don't like Jordan Love, huh? Not at all.
I mean, what's a trade? But no, I don't think this is going to sustain long term. He's not going to be in the top 5 for the next 3 years, like Allen Hurts. No, no. I'd rather have Herbert. I'd rather have Lawrence. I'd rather have Dak Prescott. There's a whole litany of quarterbacks I think are more likely to have that in the range of outcomes over a number of years. And instead, everyone's got Jordan Love there because they think he's also young, but he's also not going to do it.
Reminds me that I need to go as soon as Russ posts the Trade Addict show from yesterday. I need to go back. I need to listen. I need to remember what it was that I wanted to make for a trade in Trade Addicts 11 because I wanted to trade him
before the podcast comes out. Yeah,
I want to. No. I need to listen to the podcast to remember what I wanted to do. But I want to give him Jordan Love and end up with something on his team. Maybe it was Stroud. I think he's low on Stroud. I don't remember exactly what it is, but like, there's something I wanted to do to make a move where I could potentially get a little bit better than what I am, because this is the team that I traded. I traded Josh Allen, to get Love in the 102. And so I got Love and Jaden Daniels for Josh Allen, which I think is probably a win overall. But I also don't want Love necessarily. And so it's the cascade. And if he's actually, he may actually be good, but if he's actually good, then he's like good as a second tier quarterback, not a first tier quarterback. So
these are the no-brainer stuff. To me, in Dynasty, if he's good, you pay for that. Yeah, like that to me just stands out. Like if he's a top 12 quarterback, well, good, because that's why he's kind of valued right now. And you're willing to give me a top 12 quarterback as well with a plus. So if he's actually good, you do okay. If he's bad, I do okay. And if he's just okay, I do okay. Like there's no lose scenario with a reasonable trade at their current values to me, unless like you think Justin Herbert will never be good again, not just have a down year, but will never be a top 12 quarterback again, in which case I just strongly disagree with that. Or Dak Prescott won't ever again be a top 12 quarterback. That's where we disagree, not on if Jordan Love. And also, just to reiterate, Jordan Love being good is for me about fantasy. You want to tell me he's a great quarterback? Cool. I have opinions, but they're not really what I'm playing right now. I'm not NFL GMing. He could be just an elite at throwing that there ball. I don't know. I when I say football, I still think what you call soccer. So, like, talent-wise, isn't really my game in this thing, to be clear. If you're out on Love, then you're out on Purdy. No, because Purdy's not nearly as hyped. Purdy comes a little easier. And he's harder to trade if you had him. It would be harder to trade for Kyler, Herbert, Dak Prescott. It would be harder to trade for those guys with Purdy. Just to leave the nasty value word out, if you're trying to get one of those guys with Purdy, you have to add more. Like they want more in that trade than Purdy, than Love. Not all the time, because not everyone has the same opinion, but generally that's what I find and what ADP and all that stuff seems to suggest is true. But yeah, if you're going to give me Kyler, Dak, Herbert, Lamar's probably well valued right now. I can't remember if he's falling into this category. He wasn't last time I looked, but he would be in here. With a plus for Purdy, I would do that too. Yeah. And I think Purdy had a really good year as well last year.
Yeah, he did, but Love had more volume too, like considerably more volume than Purdy.
Okay.
Which I mean, I like volume basically everywhere, and he got, and again, this is, you're having to kind of extrapolate out and hope that the second half of the season is more of who he is than the first half of the season. But he ended up in the mid 60s in terms of completion percentage. That's a push for me right now, Genji, because I don't think either of them do enough with their legs to. I'd take Jaden Daniels over either of them right now. He said,
"Sneaky answer."
Yeah, that was part of the reason. So when I made the Josh Allen trade, it wasn't Love that was the centerpiece of that for me. It was the fact that I already knew Caleb Williams was gone, and I could go get Jaden Daniels in a super flex league where, like, to me, if Jaden Daniels stays healthy, he's a top 6 quarterback scoring wise. So,
with you,
I mean, it's just what if he runs for 700 yards, he's a top quarterback. Like it's what happens. I don't make the rules.
All right. I'm gonna get up in the morning again, so I think I'm done.
We hit it.
Good questions though. It's not you guys, it's me.
It doesn't matter if he's a running back. A running back is a valuable thing at quarterback, but we're Pete. Look over there.
Bye everyone.